business owners will say, I know you just told me what you like doing, but I'm going to have you do this anyway, which you just told me you don't like doing, but I'm going to have you do it anyway. It's literally the round peg in the square hole. You can make a round peg fit in a square hole. You can take a hammer, you can pound it in there, you can sand it, you can fill it, you can make it look pretty good. But you know where the damage happens? When that person comes out. Because you have built your company and built your processes around a round peg in a square hole.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Eat, Sleep, and Invest. I'm your host, Brian Driscoll, and I'm here with Austin McCurdy. What's up, man?
Hey, Brian. How you doing?
Austin's with Sharper Business Solutions. Why don't you tell everybody what you guys do? Because you'll do a better job than I do.
No, that's all right. I appreciate it. Sharper Business Solutions, we're business consultants, business coaches, focusing on business systems and processes. So we come in to work with a company. We're really putting together a growth strategy as to how they're going to grow and what that's going to look like long term, and then breaking down those goals for them, building out the processes. And really it comes down to, I like to say that every business is a people business. And it's really working with your people, working with the organization as to what do the positions in your company look like. And so usually we start out talking about like, what is this job going to do? Like, what are the responsibilities for it? And what do the processes look like? Going through that for the last several years with hundreds of real estate investors and hundreds of companies at this point, we began to realize that we had to have a more objective way of figuring out who the right person was for this role. Crazy thing about real estate investing is it's not that large of an industry from a company standpoint. So going in and finding like an acquisition rep who has done acquisitions before, there's not a whole lot of them out there. So you're doing a lot of training of people who have maybe done sales before, but have never done real estate acquisitions before or real estate dispositions. So we started building out those systems and processes and KPIs for those roles. And then we started looking at, okay, well, who is this person that we're looking for when knowledge, skills, and experience aren't there? They've not done the job before. And so we used some different tools along the way and settled on Predictive Index for a bunch of different reasons. One is it's one of the most accurate behavioral assessments on the market. It can be used to make a hiring decision. So we started with PI, been about 5 years ago, I guess, and really worked with a lot of our clients on that and understanding what the position is they're looking to hire, like what is the behavior we're looking for, and then running those assessments on their applicants and on their team to say who's the right person for this job and do they like doing that. So PI doesn't tell us that somebody can or can't do something. It tells us what they like doing and whether they're actually going to like that job or not. So for example, with me, if I applied for an acquisitions role, I can put together a pretty good resume. In fact, my LinkedIn profile says that I'm Sharper's sales manager. From like 5 years ago, I was the sales manager. It's still on there. I need to update it. But I don't like sales. So you might look at my resume and say, oh, he was a sales manager. He sold X millions of dollars in sales and all these kinds of things. But as soon as you run a behavioral assessment on me, everything about that assessment screams, don't hire this person for sales. So you say, well, Austin, why did you apply for the sales role? Well, because I know sales guys make a lot of money, and I know in the real estate space they make a lot of money, right? And so I applied for that job for a different reason than that I like sales. And that's what PI will tell you right out of the gate is whether this person's going to like acquisitions or not, whether they're going to like dispositions or not, and really help save you in that turnover and that turnover cost. You know, there's a lot of money out there, a lot of research out there on how much turnover, and it's it's expensive is the short answer. And so what PI does is it helps you predict long-term job performance and help save you from hiring somebody who doesn't like sales or doesn't like lead management or doesn't like cold calling or whatever you're hiring them for, and save that ahead of time. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it does and kind of what we do with it.
I think it's really important. That's why I asked Austin to come on today, because a lot of people, number one, in the real estate space don't even know this stuff's out there. And even me, like, we're a fast growing startup. I've hired people and I keep bouncing them from position to position to position because they don't fit in there. When meanwhile, if I did a PI beforehand, it would give me, it's not foolproof, but it would give you like an indication on where they may succeed a little bit better. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through, there's 17 of them, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on each of them. And Austin's going to point us in a direction. Hey, here's some of the ones that would work in the real estate space and what they may be good at, and then some of them that might not be, just to give you guys an idea.
Yeah, I think on that note too, there's 4 different categories of them. So like you said, there's 17 different reference profiles, and that's like the 30,000 foot view. Like we talked about earlier, you're a captain, and that has a general profile to it or general target. Like that means you're dominant, you're social, you're fast paced, and you're somewhat casual with the rules. Then it says you have a corporate hook is what a captain has, which means that rules, you're not motivated by rules and structure, but you'll follow them to a degree sufficient for most organizations in most situations. But when I look at your profile, your captain profile, actually, you're really situational with rules. Sometimes you'll follow them, sometimes you don't. You'll kind of go either way. So when I say captain or I say any of the reference profiles, it's think about it like a 30,000 foot view. I'm just giving you a general idea of who this person is and what you're looking for. And that's a big question I get is, hey, Austin, I'm hiring for this position. What profile am I looking for? Like which is the one kind of in general that I'm looking for? And there's 4 different categories that they break down to as well. So I know we're going to talk about those.
Yeah, and you know what? That's interesting too, because everyone, before I hopped on, I sent Austin my predictive index results, and you're right, because you can have a captain that's one thing and another thing. So it's just like an indicator. I mean, you take the test for like 2 minutes. It's scary accurate, but still, you got to still a 2-minute test too. So you want to take a step back and use your brain.
That's one of the things that's great about PI in the screening process on the front end. Is that, it takes the average person, you're an overachiever, Brian, too. It usually takes 6.5 minutes for the average person to take it. The beauty of it is that when you're screening applicants on the front end of it, it's really, really quick. Like there's another assessments out there that could take 45 minutes. And this one is 95% accurate, does it really, really fast, and gives you a really good idea of who this person is. And to put some numbers behind like foolproof or like you have to look at everything, the whole person showing up. Behavioral assessments are about 28% of the picture of what you're looking at. Now, to put it in context, a resume is 12%. So the fact that they did the job before in a resume is only a 12% predictor of long-term job performance. PI is 28. So it's better than a resume, but to your point, there's still all these other factors you have to look at as well. We have to look at culture. We have to look at values. We have to look at how do they want to grow within your company, mobility. Our new RISE curriculum talks about that it's got to be, a mix of potential and performance. So you got to look at their desire. Do they want to do the job? You got to look at knowledge, skills, and experience. You got to look at behavioral profiles. You got to look at cognitive ability, and you got to look at mobility. What are they looking to do with your company? Are they looking to grow, or is this just somebody who's looking for a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday job? And that may be what you're looking for in your company, but you need to know that. Is this person looking to move up and grow, or are they just looking for a job? All those things come together to create who this person is.
All right, so let's break it down like this then. Let's go through the different profiles. And then, for example, social has 6 profiles: altruist, collaborator, persuader, captain, maverick, and promoter. They're all classes of social person. So what do you look at when you see someone applying for a job, and where would they fit and where would they be somewhere they don't like?
So the social profiles mean that their strongest drive is for social interaction, right? Interaction with other people. So right out of the gate, think about in your company, and particularly real estate, what are the positions that they're interacting with people, right? Where they need people to like them, say even that, okay? So we're talking about acquisitions, we're talking about dispositions, we're talking about lead management. Those are like your main social profiles. Possibly the integrator, the COO of the company might be social. Kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish there. I'll come back to that in a minute. These are your sales profiles. They're interacting with people. So like I said, that's the social ones. So we start off with like a collaborator, okay? And collaborators are friendly, they're understanding, they're willing, they're patient team members. Think about lead management, right? What's their job in lead management? The phone rings, they answer it, and they're listening to the seller. They're listening to their problems. They're building a rapport. They're being collaborative with them. They're not telling them, oh, well, you're asking way too much for your house, right? They're saying, we can help you. Let's get somebody out on an appointment with you, right? Let me get somebody out there. They're not delivering them bad news, and they're patient listeners, right? So that's your lead management. Calls coming in, think like customer service kind of stuff on the front end of this thing. Promoters are kind of the same way as collaborators. They're both very similar profiles. They're both collaborative, they're both social and patient, and they're both like casual with the rules. For example, lead management. Are you looking for them to disqualify or qualify leads? Like I always talk to clients about, I want lead management to qualify leads, not disqualify leads. So I need them to not like over process it. So they're low rules and structure. No doesn't mean no. This person saying that they want retail doesn't really mean they're only going to take retail, right? Like that's casual. So that's your collaborators. and that's your promoters, right? They're in that lead management kind of role from there. Not great at acquisitions. They don't like acquisitions because acquisitions is delivering that, hey, here's really what your house is worth. You're like, I know you think it's worth this, but this is really what we can pay, right? They got to deliver some bad news. They got to deal with some conflict with the seller, potentially things like that. Collaborators and promoters kind of want to stay away from that, right? They want to be collaborative. They want to know that they're helping somebody, right? And they work well on a team. So like when it comes to individual competition, like they want to be the sales team hit this goal. The lead managers hit this goal. Not like I'm competing against the guy next to me. Okay. So that's where collaborators, promoters fit into lead management, which also has some follow-up in it, following back up afterwards because they're persistent. They're not going to give up on, calling back to get the appointment because, call me back in 6 months, right? Things like that. So that's your collaborators and your promoters. Now, we move over into acquisitions, still a very social type of job, right? What is the number one thing of an acquisition rep? Interacting with people. That's what they do. So we're looking at the reference profiles. We're looking at captains and mavericks are kind of the primary ones. Working with real estate investors and working with other companies, salespeople, acquisitions people in real estate are different than your typical salesperson. And we always go after salespeople and we give them sales training and acquisitions, but they're a little bit different of a person, which is why guys will hire salespeople with sales experience and they don't work out in acquisitions. And we're like, what happened? They had like 20 years of sales experience, but they were a different type of salesperson. So in real estate world, we're looking at captains and mavericks for sales. And the reason is because they're more task than people oriented. So their dominance is stronger than their drive for social. So even though they like people, they're more dominant. So when they're going out on an appointment, it's about, I know that, you're in a distressed situation, you need to sell this house, but we have to make sure that, we're protecting the company and that there is a profit margin in there, right? From there. Somebody who's more social than task-based, so we find that they tend to pay too much for the house. They kind of get pulled into the story. They'll spend 3 hours on an appointment because they're talking. They like to talk. Captains and mavericks are more motivated by the goal, which the goal is, I need to get a contract on this house in acquisitions. So that's where the captains and mavericks tend to lean more into acquisitions because they're more dominant, but they're also fast-paced. So unlike the collaborators and promoters who like a steady pace, they don't mind sitting at a desk all day, the captains and the mavericks want to be out in the field. They want to go on appointments. They like handling multiple priorities. Give me as many appointments as I can handle in a day. They're proactive, right? And then they're comfortable with risk as well, which is an acquisitions role. I'm going to go out there and just say, I don't know everything about this house, but let me get it under contract and we'll make it a deal. Usually that's why Dispositions doesn't like acquisitions because Dispo's got to clean up the mess, right? So a little shout out to the Dispo rep.
Yeah, quick question for you on that too. So I'm a captain, right?
Yeah.
Who do captains butt heads with? Does it work that way? Is there like certain people that if you roll this way, some other people may not work well with you, these profiles?
Yeah. So you're going to butt heads with like the stabilizing profiles, which are your guardians, operators, artisans, adapters. So essentially me, so you and I are going to struggle if we're on the same sales team. And the reason is because we're going to take action, make decisions, and communicate completely opposite of each other. So for example, you as a captain, you have a very proactive approach to things. Okay. I'm more of a responsive. I'm a little slower. I'm going to be the brake. You're the gas. Right. So you're going to say, Austin, let's go. And I'm going to say, wait a second, Brian, we got to get all the details first. We got to figure it all out. And you're going to say, no, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out as we go. You're more dominant. You want to push harder, from there as well. We're independents. So me on your team, which is why, I tend to be more like the finance side of things. So it's the finance guy constantly telling you, no, you can't spend money on that. And you're like, but I'm missing opportunity. I got to go from there. So yeah, that's where you're going to the social and the stabilizing tend to okay, oddly enough, in the business world, they tend to conflict a little bit there and not get along real great. Okay. However, I found that in the social side of things, talking about opposites attract, they tend to attract each other like husbands and wives kind of things. It's really kind of funny how many captains and mavericks I'll find married to guardians and artisans and operators and stuff like that. It's almost like on the social side of things, we're going down a rabbit trail here, but we have this innate sense of what we need the opposite of us to kind of balance us out. But in the workplace, we attract the people that think like us, right? They make decisions like us, which is when we go to work with a company, that's usually one of the pitfalls that we've kind of found is they've hired an entire team that's one type, and then the other side of the business is getting ignored. Marcus Krigler, who's, with BEC's CFO, he said that before. He's like, he's finding that people aren't investing in their finance as fast as their sales is growing. And I find that too when I go in and I run assessments on an entire team, I find them all grouped together. They're all like the social profiles. And then there's no stabilizing profile. And then you ask them for a P&L and they're like, yeah, we don't really have those. Or you ask them like, do you have your process document anywhere? They're like, no, we don't really have that either, right? Because they know they need it. They know it's important, but nobody on the team really wants to do it, right? There. And so that's where we kind of come in sharper and offset those and look and say, okay, well, what's the process and are we getting results? Because captains, mavericks, promoters, the social profiles, they don't think really in terms of results. They think in terms of how can we do this in a new way? Right? How can we be innovative? How can we be agile, and adjust to the market? Which is why they tend to, I see a lot of this profile, the social profiles in the real estate space. They like that fast-paced change, innovation. Real estate's constantly changing. What strategy worked right now, may need to be different next month. And they they enjoy that side of things. So captains, mavericks are generally your acquisition reps. They're more dominant than they are. They're social still, but they're more dominant than social. I'll see a lot of captains in the sales management role. So like you, Brian, I'll see you in acquisitions, but managing the acquisitions departments. I'll see a lot of mavericks in just straight acquisitions, which is funny because those profiles, there's not very many of them out there. They're a lower percentage of the population, but they gravitate towards real estate. I'll walk into another type of business room, and there's like no captains and no mavericks anywhere in the room. Then I walk into a mastermind of real estate investors, and everybody is a captain or maverick in the entire room. It's like hilarious. They all gravitated to that.
Yeah. Real estate investors are a very specific type of people,
They are. And so then there's one more in the social profile. Well, there's two more. And there's one called a persuader. Persuaders are usually, I see, in dispositions. They're competitive, but they're more people than task oriented. They fit well into that proactive hunting kind of sales, but a little more social, which is the dispo side of things. Like I'm selling to people I sold to before. I built a relationship. I still want to win. I still want to hit my goals. I like multiple priorities, but I like people a little bit more. Whereas the captains and mavericks are more goal oriented. So we'll see captains and mavericks in acquisitions. We'll see persuaders in dispositions. And then I'll see collaborators and promoters in lead management. And then you mentioned earlier about you need like an assistant, and that's that altruist profile. I've seen that. My assistant's actually an altruist, is what I hired. And I've recommended it to a few people lately of the altruist for real estate. Oh, just really any kind of altruists are social, but they're detailed oriented. They're really the only one of the social profiles that are detailed oriented. So they like people, but they follow rules and structure.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they're the only one of the social profiles that are that way. So they're kind of an anomaly. Most people who are detailed oriented aren't socially driven. I don't know why. We test them. It just kind of doesn't go that way, except for the altruist. The altruists are social and detailed oriented. So they make really great like assistants because they'll call people, they'll talk to people, but then they follow all the rules and structure as well. So those are kind of the social profiles.
You know what's cool about, like, I like about the PI and everything too? It's like everybody is perfect for something. It's just like we as business owners do the wrong thing. It's like everyone's got a skill set and everyone likes doing something. This just helps you find out, okay, what do they like doing so we can give it to them.
This is why I just tell people with PI is what happens is we interview somebody, we run a PI on them, and the assessment, what they did in the assessment was they told us what they liked doing. And then what we'll do as business owners, we'll say, I know you just told me what you like doing, but I'm going to have you do this anyway, which you just told me you don't like doing, but I'm going to have you do it anyway. It's literally the round peg in the square hole. And Gary and I, my business partner, were talking one day, and you know what? You can make a round peg fit in a square hole. You can take a hammer, you can pound it in there, you can sand it, you can fill it, you can make it look pretty good. But you know where the damage happens? When that person comes out. Because you have built your company and built your processes around a round peg in a square hole. And you can make that work. But all of a sudden, when you need to scale, when you need to add another one, when that person moves up in the company, they move out of that role for whatever the reason they move out of it, that's where all the damage happens. Because all of a sudden, you're like, wait a second, why were they doing sales that way? You could put me in sales. I'm actually a really good salesperson. But I sell in a weird, any kind of salesperson will look at the way I sell and be like, that's not how you sell. You would look at me, Brian, and be like, Austin, what are you doing? That's not how you sell. But I actually, when I get into a sales role all by myself, I do a really good job. But I will revamp all the processes we've built around me doing it. And if you try to go hire another salesperson, you'll be like, what was Austin doing? Like, how was he getting the results he was getting? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to watch, is when that person comes out of the role. People ask me that all the time. Well, can I stick this guardian that I just interviewed in sales? Like, yeah, you can. We can revamp the entire process, how you do things, but it's not going to work long term, and it's eventually going to cause you more heartache than it did, positive things.
Yeah, those are good points there too, because you're right. Yeah, you can stick people into the roles. Then you're building a process based on someone who's not technically built for it. And then when you get the guys that are built for it, like me, I'd be looking at it and just be like, dude, I can't operate like that.
Oh, no. You would see the way I did sales, and you would just be like, and it works for me.
Right.
So, and you kind of move into the stabilizer and the other profiles, because people will say this. Well, can I hire a guardian? Can I hire an analyzer to do sales? So I'll tell you that the social profiles sell intangibles really, really well. Okay. Which is really what wholesaling in particular is. It's an intangible. It's we're going to pay this for your house, but we're going to figure out a creative way of doing this. Okay. It's a little bit of an intangible. And what I mean by that is a non-intangible would be like selling you my iPhone. You know exactly what it is. You know everything about it. When you guys buy a house, you may not know everything about it. You're taking a lot of risk. You don't know exactly what this house is going to sell for. You don't know exactly what's inside of those walls. Right? There's some intangibles there. Whereas this is a cell phone. You're buying it. So people like Guardians and the other high detailed profiles can sell a very technical product. Like they'll sell the same thing over and over again. I have a client who does stack testing. The stacks that come out of factories, the emissions testing. His salesperson is a guardian because when he gets on the phone, it's very technical. Like he has to find out exactly what kind of test they need, and it has to meet government specifications for the stack testing. And so he gets on there. It's a very technical sales that he's selling. Me with PI, I sell a lot of PI. It's very technical. I know a lot about it, and I get very detailed with it. So it depends on what. So if you're watching this podcast and you're in a different industry, you have to look and say, are they selling a highly specialized product, or are they selling more of an intangible idea? And the Mavericks, Persuaders, Captains, all those people sell intangibles really, really well. The Guardians, the Analyzers, the Controllers, the other profiles, the high structured ones, sell highly specialized products very, very well. Anyway, I could give you a lot of examples about all that. But that's why you have to look what it is. If you're doing real estate investing, stick with the social profiles. That's where you want to be at with sales.
That's good. Now, can a captain or Maverick also sell the specialized? Like they can sell both? Or are you saying the Guardians sometimes are better because they can get into the data?
Right. Not usually. They don't like it. They want to just sell and move on. Like they don't want to get so for example, if I come across a Maverick salesperson, they'll sell a cell phone and then they'll flip around and sell a TV and then they'll sell cars. Right. You see all those people, they'll sell whatever and they could do it on the fly. Like I could probably hand you, Brian, being a captain, anything and you could sell it. You would figure out how to sell this thing. If I then told you, here, Brian, go sell this iPhone, and then I told you, okay, keep selling iPhones, at some point you'd be like, Austin, can I sell something different than an iPhone? Like, how about, whereas me, I just sell an iPhone over and over and over and over again. And then I know everything there is to know about the iPhone.
Makes sense.
So that's where the Mavericks, it doesn't mean they can't learn it, but like usually when I go to buy a car, I know more than the salesperson does about that particular car because I'm a guardian. I've researched everything about it. And I show up, and it's very funny how I know more than they do because they're just selling the idea that this is a great car and you need this car and you look great in this car, right? And then you're asking them how does the hood open up? I'm not sure. I've never really opened the hood. And I'm like over there, like, well, it's right here and it's this, like that. So you want to keep Mavericks in that big picture, selling ideas kind of a concept, all right? If they're managing a team, that's great. They will sell the team on why it's a great idea for us to do something different. Now, you
Right.
might ask them then, well, how are we going to do it? And they're like, well, I don't know. Austin's going to tell you how exactly we're going to do it. I'm just here to sell you on the idea of it, right? It's like within Sharper. Gary's a persuader. I'm a guardian. So Gary gets up to the team. He explains to the team about this idea, these goals, gets everybody all excited about it. And then I come in and say, and here's the process, and here's the KPIs, and here's how we're actually going to implement this. And the whole room deflates. Like, which one is better? You need both.
Right.
I need the team to get excited about the idea of the change of the company. And then I also need somebody who looks and says, and this is how we're actually going to execute that idea, which kind of leads us into the stabilizing profiles from there.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because say you were on my team, if I want to get a point across with you and like get you on the same page, I'm going to have to provide you with data and all the information versus if I have a Maverick on my team, they don't need the data. They don't even want to hear the data. They just want, I got to sell them on the idea on, hey, here's why we need to do this for whatever reason. So you need to pay attention to who you're dealing with and how you act.
Exactly. It's like when you're writing a job posting, the social profiles keep the job posting short and high level. When you're doing a stabilizing job posting, somebody with a high rules and structure, it's a page long with everything about the job because they want to know everything about it. The Maverick will never read the full page job description. They'll just read, you want to make money? Yes. Pick up the phone. Guardian, I'm going to get on the phone and have all kinds of questions for you about this job, even if you've given me a page long. So yeah, it's who are you managing, who are you working with, which sometimes is frustrating for like the Mavericks and captains because some of the other profiles want more information that they don't necessarily always have. And they're just like, I hear this a lot. They'll say, I need you to be a problem solver. And the other profiles, the high D profiles, are like, okay, but what is the problem we're solving? Like, because they need the details. What exactly are you expecting out of this thing? From there. You know this. I used to own a bunch of Papa John's pizza restaurants, and I explained this the other day, that the visionaries and those high A dominant profiles, they know what the pizza looks like coming out of the oven. They don't know necessarily how to make it, right? But they know what it looks like coming out of the oven. And that's okay. As the owner of a company, you need to know what the final product should look like. And you're driving the rest of the team towards hitting that final product. You may not necessarily know how that product is built. I was just watching a show last night, The Men Who Built America. And it was that way with Rockefeller. He didn't know how to refine oil. He needed the scientist, but he knew what he was looking for right from there. He just had to find the technical guy. And they were talking about that you have to have those two things come together. You got to have the person that knows what the final product. Gary Harper with us. Gary knows how he wants our clients to feel. He's a persuader, high social. He wants them to feel this way about things. And he knows what the final product should look like from them. But then we get into the minutia of how is that going to be laid out from there as well.
And everyone you just got to build the team properly.
Right.
So we're in stabilizers. So we talked about guardians. We got adapter, artisan, and operator. What do you think there?
So I'll start with this. If you're in the real estate world, you're not going to see a lot of these in your company. You may have hired one already, but if we're building out targets, there's not a whole lot of roles and responsibilities in your company. I've seen them in cold calling. I know a lot of people are using VAs right now. I've seen a lot of VAs who have, so these profiles they're high structure, they're low social. So right out of the gate, they're not motivated by interacting with people. So you've just knocked out like all of sales in there. They're high detailed. They don't like risk, okay? Which real estate tends to be a little on the risky side. Where I have seen them is oddly enough, I've seen them in your marketing world, because real estate marketing is different than a lot of other industries in that it's very data driven and very analytical. And I know, Brian, you guys with PPC and things like that, there's a lot of data that they're looking at. And it's not so much like, okay, for example, my old business, my client, my avatar was everybody. If you were hungry, you were a client, you were a potential customer for me. So I would do mass marketing. I'd be on every TV channel all day long. I'd mail to every house in the area because everybody was my client at any given day, any given moment. In real estate, we're looking for this needle in the haystack, right? They have to meet certain qualifications. So it's very data driven and more data driven than really like, did they like our ad? they need to like the ad, right? They need to like when the postcard comes, it's got to look sharp and it's got to look a certain way. And Brandon on our team does all that color study stuff, and certain colors that get certain emotions from people and certain fonts and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying not that, but there's so much analytics that go into your marketing that I am seeing these starting to pop up in our larger clients that need to hire a marketing person, where it's more of a data analyst in the marketing world than it is like somebody who is your typical advertising agency person, right? Building copy and stuff like that. So I'll see them there. I'll also see them in finance. These are your finance people. They're protecting the money. They're protecting the company. I'll see them in HR, but not so much recruiting. Okay, recruiting is sales. Okay, whereas HR is more protecting the company. So I'll see guardians, operators, artisans in that. I've also been seeing them lately as data analysts, underwriters. Now, a lot of small investors early on. Well, okay, think about this. You start a real estate company. You do the lead management. You do the acquisitions. You do the analyst. Well, not in that order, but you do lead management. Then you analyze the deal. Then you go on the appointment, right? You do all three. Then what happens is you get a little bigger. You hire a lead manager. So now the lead manager gets all the incoming calls. You underwrite the deal and you go on the appointment. Then what we do is we hire an acquisitions rep and we just have them underwrite the deal and do the sales. Those are two completely different things. Underwriting a deal and buying a house are not the same thing. And so we're asking a maverick who doesn't like rules and structures, is fast paced, is comfortable with risk, to now underwrite a deal and be detail oriented with it and get this thing spot on. And then and then we're like, well, why didn't he buy the deal right? Well, because he underwrote his own deal and he didn't care. He just slapped some numbers on a paper. And when he got to the negotiation, he thought, yeah, I might be off. They might be right. Their house is worth $50,000 more. I'll give them an extra $20,000 and let Dispo figure it out. Right? That's how the Mavericks and those low D profiles kind of think.
Funny you say that too, because I'm a captain. I kind of wing it when I'm given a number. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm close, and it's right. Going to be safe. But I'll make offers half the time on the spot. It's like, okay, yeah, I think it's going to cost $5. And I tally it up in my head for 5 minutes, and it's boom.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is this, and this is, I've been talking to a lot of clients lately about this, is that, and this is a rabbit trail here, but if you underwrote the deal, you showed my house, and you said $200,000, and I said, yeah, Brian, I think my house is worth more like $225. What would you do?
Start negotiating.
You would probably come up, right? You would negotiate because you would think, well, maybe I missed a comp somewhere. I would tell you, well, this guy sold his house for $225 right here next to me. Did I run that comp or not? I don't remember. Nope. Okay, well, I'll go to 210 and, we'll go from there. If I got to
we'll probably meet in the middle is what's going to happen.
Right, I'll just come back. Okay, now, if I underwrite the deal, now, if somebody in your office underwrites the deal and says, Brian, you cannot spend more than $200,000 on this house, okay? And I tell you $225, what are you doing? You're not coming up on the hot price. You've already been told by your manager you can't pay more than $200. You already know that. You might step out and call me and say, hey, I think we might have a problem here. This guy's telling me his house worth $300,000. I'm at $200,000. Can you look at this again? But you're not coming off at $200,000. What are you doing now? You're pulling all the other levers. Well, we're a really great company to work with. We're going to make sure we get this deal done fast for you. We're going to stop and be here the whole time. You're starting to pull all the other levers of value and leaving price alone. Right on that. Right. Whereas we're finding that acquisition reps who did their own underwriting are going straight to price, and they're negotiating on price, not on everything else. And so because they're doing their own underwriting, now I do understand that when you're small, your acquisition reps kind of have to do some amount of underwriting from there. But I think we're handing it off to them way too fast. Our larger clients who are doing underwriting in a separate department, this is what they're hiring. They're hiring artisans, operators, guardians who are high detailed. They're there to mitigate the risk, right? And they're putting together the Mayos based on a bunch of detailed information that's all come together. There's a whole reason why they came up with this number. Because I'm a high D profile, we always have reasons why we do things. So if we came up with a number, there's a reason why we came up with that number, not just because we winged it on the job site like you Mavericks and captains do, right from there. So these would be they would fit well into marketing. But again, the data analytics of your marketing department, they fit well into underwriting deals if you're big enough to have somebody like that makes sense to have a full-time underwriter. They fit into your finance. These are your bookkeepers and your controllers. Well, controllers are kind of a different one, but they're like your bookkeepers over on that side. Which again, you kind of got to be at $5 million plus before you even start talking about full-time person in the finance world.
So basically, what I'm hearing is if you're a one-man show or a two-man show, this is not the profile you're going to be pulling in for the positions that early in your career.
No, stay away from these. In the real estate world, like stay away from these. If you're in property management, they might be the ones who are doing collections and evictions, stuff like that. If you're in property management, but yeah, if you're running a wholesaling fix and flip company, like these are the roles that you're going to stay away from early on. Like you want to build your company out of the gate. Right? You're a fast growing company. You need gas added to the fire. You need the social profiles. You need the sales side of things coming in
All right, cool.
from there.
All right, so next up, we got the persistent category, individualist and scholar.
The individualists are what I like to call the utility players. They kind of they'll be your like 7 or 8 out of 10s in almost every position of the company. Now, to say that, they could be the MVP of your team because they can fit almost anywhere you need them to. They'll flip from acquisitions all the way over to underwriting to a dispo. I see them pop up almost everywhere. You know, Steve Trang. So Steve Trang is an individualist, kind of leans more towards sales. Susan Harper, who works with us, is an individualist. She leans more towards processes and things like that. So I see individuals kind of go anywhere. There's not a particular position that they're in. I often see them in training. They'll train people because they're moving to another role from there. So I would look at, like, they're good people to have on your team. If there's not a target in real estate world that I would build for an individualist to say that. But if I came across one, I would say, okay, well, they can sit here for a while, then maybe jump over here as we're growing as a company. They can take on kind of those new departments and new roles while we get them built out and then hire somebody else from there. Scholars, I don't see them a whole lot in real estate to be like just direct, like they're just not really in there from there. So that kind of wraps up persistent profiles. Not a lot there.
Cool. Yeah, pretty quick. If you're brand new in business too, you're not looking there most likely.
No, not likely.
All right, so then we got analytical. There's 5 here. We got an analyzer, controller, specialist, strategist, and venturer.
Let's start with the analyzer, and then I'll kind of loop everybody else together. The analyzers and the controllers are where you're seeing in the financial world. They're the controllers of the finance department. So in the finance department, you have bookkeepers, controllers, and really CFOs. It's kind of where it jumps from there. Most small business owners, you're always going to be the CFO of your own company. You really don't need somebody making financial decisions for you. But that controller is the one that's controlling the incoming and outgoing money. They're the ones that are enforcing the budgets and keeping everybody on track. And that's kind of your analyzers and your controllers are in that world there. The other roles in here are ones I'll see as integrators and in like department heads, specialists, strategists, venturers, those 3 in particular. They're your integrators along with the captains as well. But most captains who are great integrators are borderline like strategists. They're pretty high Ds. Their rules and structure are pretty high on captains. Specialist strategists, venturers, those are your department heads. Those are your like sales managers and the reason is they're low social, so they don't need people to like them. So when they're delivering bad news or like, hey, you got to fill out the CRM, you got to go on this appointment, they don't really need the team to buy in. They struggle a little bit as visionaries because they don't really want to sell the vision. They just want you to go do your job. Right. So it kind of feeds more into like management. They're detail oriented enough or enough that they're going to enforce the processes. Whereas like mavericks and even captains are kind of like, here's the process. Let's try to follow it most of the time. Your analytical profiles are going to say either follow the rules or there's consequences to not following the rules, following the structure. So they're going to enforce those things. They're not going to really need buy-in from the team. It's okay. You don't like this. You still got to go do your job. You still got to show up to work. But they're dominant enough where they're comfortable with conflict. So they're comfortable with conflict. They don't need social interaction, and they follow rules and structure. I think, Eric Brewer. I think I heard Eric Brewer say at one time the best. He goes, what I've learned about you integrators is that you're all a-holes. That's what he said about us. And I'm an integrator, and I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong. Like, and we're okay with that because it just doesn't matter. So these are kind of your managers, your department heads, your leaders of operations from there. They're not going to be the inspiring manager that gets everybody going. They're going to be the manager that says, okay, now it's time to go do your job, right? And they're the ones that really get the team going and get things accomplished. They're very focused on the results of things more so than did we do it on a new way or even did we follow the process. The analyticals are, did we get the result we were looking for or not? The result was we were looking for a profit. Did we turn a profit? Not did we follow a process, not did we find a new way to sell a house, did we turn a profit? So they do really, really well in that like integrator management role. Really almost any of the analyzers do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really helpful too, going through all these. And I think everyone listening as well too, because it's like at every stage in your business, you're going to be looking for different things. And now you can kind of like get a little bit of a one up so you don't have to fail as much and get a low indicator. You know what I mean?
I heard this not long ago, this concept that when you're a small business, you start off as a sole entrepreneur. You make that first hire, that is 50% of your staff now. That second hire, and there's the three of you, that is 33% of your staff. I mean, those early hires, large chunks of your company that you're hiring for. It's akin to, my dad worked at UPS with millions of employees. It'd be like them hiring half of the wrong employees. It's a huge impact on your business. So when you're small, at any point in time, you never want to hire the wrong person. But when you're small, the impact that a wrong hire has on your business is significant. It can be the difference between being successful or not being successful because it makes up such a large percentage of your workforce. How many employees do you have, Brian?
We probably got in the States about 15.
Yeah. So you're talking about what? That's 15, one bad hire.
Probably like what, 7% maybe?
Yeah. I mean, one bad hire, 1 divided by 15. Yeah, it's like 7% of your company, one bad hire can make up. I mean, that's some real numbers. You talk about like a large company, one bad hire is, 0.5%, whatever, some small number. Yours is 7% of your company can be made up of bad hires just by one.
And a chain reaction of that too, having that bad hire could turn other people off. Yep. And then you're like, geez, man, we just got 7% of our company that wasn't a fit, but we now lost some other people too because they pissed them off. And they just couldn't work together and they quit.
I read this too not long ago. They said A players hire A players. B players hire C players. So your first B hire brings the whole company down from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, to your point, that one, just even hiring a B person over an A person can bring the entire company down. And what that does to the culture of that one complacent person just starts to bring everybody down from there. So it's really, really important. I think at all stages of business, but when you're, less than 50 employees, the impact that a bad hire can have on your company, it can be catastrophic.
Yeah, and you're right on the B player too. We could have a whole nother conversation on that because that's a whole nother thing, hiring the right people, values, and like A player, B player, all that kind of stuff too. But I hear you. All right, cool. Austin, hey, thanks for doing this today. We appreciate it.
Oh, I always enjoy being on with you, Brian. So anytime.
Now, everyone listening, so this is like, how much percentage do you think of everything you guys do is this little part? It's like, this is like a super small part of what you guys do, right? And businesses do in general.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do a lot of things from talent sourcing to predictive index to building out processes to running quarterly strategic meetings, implementing entire business operating systems into people's businesses. That's the RISE business operating system that we implement. So, and just about everything in between as well. So yeah, this is just one part of what we do. So
yeah. So the point is, if you're listening to this and it sounds like, wow, this is a lot of stuff, you don't have to learn it on your end. There are people out here like Austin that you just hit them up and they already know how to do this kind of stuff, plus everything else that you haven't even thought about yet. So what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I think go to sharperprocess.com. And from there, there's a link to set up a call with us. Also, social media. We're on all the social media platforms. You can hit us up on one of those as well. Somebody's always monitoring those, so you can DM us on any of the social media platforms. Just type in Sharper Business Solutions. It'll come up. Shoot us a message through that or go to the website, either one. I think is usually the easiest way to get hold of us.
What's the ideal investor look like that's a good fit to work with you guys?
We work with all different sizes of investors, from guys who are just like starting off by themselves all the way up to, multi-million-dollar investors with hundreds of employees that we've worked with as well. So really anything in between. I think it's somebody, though, who wants to grow and I always say this, they want to build a business, not have a job.
I was just going to say the same thing. Someone wants to build a business.
Yeah, so to build a business, there's nothing wrong with having a job, but a lot of companies, they're not. A lot of business owners aren't business owners; they just have a job. Dentists, doctors are probably the most obvious ones. They don't really have a business; they have a job. They have a high-paying job. If you're looking to build a business, though, that takes a different skill set and takes a different amount of knowledge to build a business and to run a business than just being a great salesperson. So if you want to build a business, that's really who we're looking for and looking to partner with in those things.
So if you're listening, you know who you are, out there hustling hardcore, doing everything yourself. Austin can help you out.
Yep, we can help you.
Cool, man. Hey, well, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate you.
Right, anytime.
Hey, everyone, thanks for listening. Until next time, get out there, crush it, close some deals. We'll see you guys.